Hello, pre-algebra students. This lesson video is going to be all about finding slope, and specifically finding slopes from graphs, and also interpreting in stories what slope would represent in the story. We're going to start with the stories. The first part of this lesson is going to be all about bank accounts. Specifically, we've got 4 friends track their savings accounts over 10 weeks on the graph below. They record their balance at 5 p.m. on Friday for each of the weeks. Describe how each account changes over the weeks. So what our job is going to be is there are 4 accounts here, A, B, C, and D, and we want to describe how each account changes. So is the account going up, going down, something different, and can you attach a number to that? So we'll go through them one at a time. We're going to start with account A. Look at the graph and see if you can figure out how you would describe account A and specifically how it's changing over time. If you need to pause the video, you can do that, but take some time to look at account A and see if you can describe it. Starting with account A, when I teach this in class, a lot of students might tell me it's going up. Absolutely. From left to right, that account is going up. So in the story, if the account's going up, it must mean that that first person is putting money into the account. They are saving money over time. That is a great description, but we want to be even more specific. So if you say that they're saving money over time or that the account is going up, the money is increasing, can you attach a number to that? And to help us figure out the number, we're going to need to look at some points on this graph. Notice that our line is starting at 40. At week 0, there's $40 in the account. At week 1, there is $60. At the end of week 2, there is $80. The end of week 3, there is $100. So listening to those numbers I've been saying, 40, 60, 80, 100, do you notice any pattern there? For account A, and I'm going to record it below here, you might notice a pattern of it's going up 20. So we could say that they are adding $20 each week. That right there is going to be the goal for the rest of these lines. Is not just can you tell me if it's going up or down, but can you attach a number to it? Now, if you were looking at this and saying, like, how on earth did she get that $20? Let's talk about it. Looking at this to figure out that it's going up $20 each week, we need to focus on how much it's going up over time. So for example, I noticed it went from 40 to 60. If you're going from 40 to 60, that means you are adding $20. And then it's going over from week 0 to week 1. That's adding $20 after 1 week. Now notice I'm going up 20 and over 1. Where have you heard that before? That sounds like slope, and it is slope. We are calculating slope. Remember, slope is all about rise over run. So here I'm noticing it went up $20 after 1 week, and 20 divided by 1, that gives me that 20. For each of these lines, this is going to be our goal, is to figure out slope, because slope is going to tell me how that account is changing. Now there's one final thing I want to say, and then we can use the rest of these as practice. Maybe instead of focusing on that week 1 $60 point, you looked at a different point. Maybe instead you looked at where the graph ended. So here, the graph is ending right here, week 3 at $100. You could also focus on the change there. So if it goes from $40 up to $100, that's a lot more than $20. How much money did they add there? To go from 40 to 100, you are adding $60 there. And if you're not sure how I got that 60, you could always use subtraction. 100 minus 40 gives you 60. But from $40, 40 plus 60 gets me to the 100. And then my run is, how many weeks is that? If I look down here at the bottom, I'm going from week 0 to week 3. So that means we went forward 3 weeks. So here, this is showing that after 3 weeks, that person put in $60. We could say they added $60 after 3 weeks. So if you add $60 over 3 weeks, it means the same thing, that they must be adding $20 each week. The reason I show both of these is because it does not matter which 2 points you pick on the graph. It should equal the same result. You should have the same slope. For me, I like to pick points closer together so I don't have to count as much. But any 2 points on that graph are going to give you that same result there. And so this is what we're going to do. We are going to go through and do B, C, and D as well. I encourage you to pause the video for each of these and try to do it first. That way you're getting that extra practice in. But we're going to be doing the same thing. And I will say as well, we are going to use the same graph in all of these answers in the next lesson. So make sure you're taking notes and you're writing down each of these. So for account A, I would want to make sure I make a note in my notes that account A is, where'd it go? They add $20 each week. We are going to need that information for the next lesson. So go ahead, let's do the same thing for account B. Again, pause the video if you need, but look at account B and see if you can figure out what account B is doing over time. Well, again, when I teach this in class, usually someone says account B, it's flat. It's not changing. It's not going up. It's not going down. It's staying the same. And so if you focus in on some numbers at week 0, so think of that as like our starting point, it's at, what number would that be? Well, halfway between 60 and 80 is 70. So I see at week 0, the account has $70. The end of week 1, the account has $70. At the end of week 2, the account has $70. You're noticing that pattern, that it's just $70 the entire time. So if the account is $70 the entire time, what is this person doing? Are they adding money? Are they taking away money? Well, here, there's no change, and so the number we could use to represent that is 0. We could say that this person is adding $0 each week. If you tried to find slope, I'm going to take some notes down here on account B. We said they add $0 each week. If you tried to find your slope, again, remember we're using rise over run for that. If I look at these 2 points I marked, I'm rising nothing. I don't need to go up to get to the next point. So my rise would be 0. My run, I can go over 1 week. It doesn't really matter though, because 0 divided by 1 is 0. And so we have our slope there is 0. The next one we're going to look at is account C. Again, pause the video if you need to for account C and see if you can describe how that account is changing and by how much. For account C, it can be a little trickier because I see 1 point here, but when I go to week 1, it's not quite clear where it is. And that's because that line is going through the middle of a box. It's going in between those 2 graph lines. When you're trying to find slope, it's good to pick a really clear point on your graph. And I can zoom in a little bit more for us. So notice how here it's in the middle of a box. I don't want to choose that because then I would have to guess what that number is. Is it 12? Is it 17, 18? I'm not sure. And if you look, week 2 looks tempting, but I can tell too, it's just like a little bit above the line. So as you look down your line for account C, There are 3 points we could use. You could use week 5. Week 5 is very clearly right there on that line, which would be at the number 10. Or at the very, very end of our line right here at week 10, that is very clearly on your x-axis, so it is at the number 0. Either of those points would be good. You don't need all 3, you just need 2 though for slope. So maybe I will focus on the first point and the last point. Using those 2 points, again, it's all going back to slope. So to figure out my answer for account C, move this over just a little bit. I'm thinking about slope, my rise over run. So here, I'm noticing to find my slope, I need to go down. And maybe that's one of the first things you noticed is this line is going down from left to right. What does that mean this person is doing? It means that they're spending money or losing money. Now that 10 looks confusing. I think that was from earlier when it was at this line, but it's not going down $10. How much is it going down? From this first point to this last point, it went down 20. So for my slope, I'm going to say if it's going down 20, I'm going to say that is a negative 20. So they spent $20. Not $20 each week though, because look, it took them all of this time, all the way until week 10 to spend that $20. And so going back again to my slope, I went down $20 over 10. They spent $20 in 10 weeks. And when I do that division, that would be negative 2. That negative 2 tells me what about count C? Can you put it into words? We can say the negative means they're not adding. So you could say maybe they're spending or taking away or withdrawing. That's a very bank word. I'm going to say they withdraw $2. But I need more words, right? Because they've withdrawn more than $2 after 10 weeks. But the 2 represents that they're withdrawing $2 each week. It's that rate or that speed they're taking out their money. We've done 3. There's only 1 left. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit again. And that is account D. One final time. And if you have not paused the video yet to try one of these on your own, try for account D. Pause the video and see, can you describe how account D is changing? In order to do this for account D, again, we're going to need some points. I'm sorry. Points on the line. And so looking at account D, when I've done this in class, a lot of people always like using that starting point. You do not have to. You can pick any points on this line, but that's usually a popular one. And again, as I look down this line, I don't want to pick points like at week 1 because that's in the middle of the box and I might have to guess or estimate what number that is. But every other line has got a nice clear point. There's a nice clear point at week 2, at week 4, week 6, week 8, week 10. We've got lots of options here. You can choose any 2 points. So some people like to just choose the first 2. When I go to calculate my rise and run, that's going to be in the negative section. So if you want, you can choose points up here instead in the positive area. No matter which 2 points you choose, you are going to get the same answer. So for me, I think I'm going to choose this point here because I know that is at 0. And I'm going to choose this point right here. And even if you chose different points than me, we should both be getting the same result. So at week 4, I know this person has $0 in their account. And at week 6, it's this line right here. So the line before the 20. So I might have to do some thinking here. I know this middle line is 10. And so the line I want is halfway between 10 and 20. So that must mean it is at 15. So, ooh, that's a big 15. But that is okay, because when I go to calculate my slope, because we keep saying this is all about slope, I'm going up from $0 to $15. So that's nice and easy. That means my line is going up 15. And then I'm going over from week 4 to week 6. That is over another 2 weeks. So I'm seeing from week 4 to week 6, so over 2 weeks, they added $15. So one last time, going back to our handy dandy slope, I'm seeing for my rise, we went up $15, and my run was over 2 weeks. So 15 divided by 2, this is the first time we're going to get a decimal. That is 7.5. When I think about in this situation what that slope means, we're adding, my line's going up. So I could say they're adding, I'm going to make that look a little bit more like money and say $7.50, and like all the other ones, each week. Now, just to prove it to you that you really can pick any 2 points, I'm going to choose a different 2 points on this one. So maybe instead you picked the one I erased. You picked the starting point in week 4. I see that a lot when I teach this in class. If you did that, our line is right here at -30. And so we could say, well, it's going from -30 to $0, and then from 0 weeks to 4 weeks. If you're going from -$30 to a savings account with $0 in it, that must mean you added $30. But notice here, it took you 4 weeks to add that $30. So adding $30 over the time span of 4 weeks. And guess what? If you do 30 divided by 4, you know what you're going to get? That same exact answer. It's because it doesn't matter which 2 points you pick for your slope, it's going to be the same because this entire line's going the same direction, and slope just means direction. So this right here is an example of how you can use slope to help you understand graphs. This question here didn't ask me to find slope. It asked me to describe how each account changes, but slope is how you can describe how each account changes. I want to summarize what we noticed in this first part here, because in the second part, we're not going to have stories. We've been doing this for every lesson in this unit, right? Start with the story, but then notice some things to help us when there is no story. So in summary, if you are working with a positive slope, that means your line would look something like this. It doesn't matter where I put it on the graph. I can put it here, I can put it down here, but it means that the line you are graphing is going up. And remember, that's always from left to right. It goes up. Similarly, if your slope is negative, it means from left to right. Your graph would look something like this. It means from left to right, your line is going down. And again, I'm just going to write from left to right. Now, the third one says 0. If you remember from up here, one of our graphs had a slope of 0. It was this account B right here. And so our third slope option is these horizontal lines. Lines that go sideways like this are horizontal. So this third one, we can say a 0 slope means the line would be horizontal. There is one last option, and that last option is instead of a horizontal line, you might see a line like this, a line that goes up and down. And we call those lines, why am I writing in yellow? We call those lines vertical lines. Now notice we're out of numbers. All numbers are either positive, negative, or 0. any number you're thinking of in your head is going to fall into one of these categories. So there are no other numbers we can use. So for lines like these, we say the slope is undefined. That means there is no number you can use to define the slope. And these are all the possibilities when you talk about slope. All lines are either going to go up, down, be horizontal, or be vertical. And the corresponding slope is above for each of those graphs. This is really important because especially with positive and negative, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see is students having graphs that look like this, but forgetting that if I ask you about slope, that slope should be negative. This is also a really good thing to put in your notes. This is a really good thing to put in your notes because you can use this to help you when it comes to the second part where we're calculating slope from these linear equation graphs. So the directions say find the slope for each graph, but notice now that there's no story and my graph looks a little different. Up here, we just had quadrants, quadrants 1 and quadrants 4. I was missing that other part of our graph because we can't have negative weeks. But down here, we have the entire coordinate plane. Everything we said above is still true. Everything we said above about using rise over run to calculate slope and that you can use any 2 points on your graph is going to be helpful for when we go to calculate slope here. So for example, if I wanted to find the slope here, I am always going to go from left to right. And so right away, if you just look at this graph from left to right, do you notice what direction this line is going? It's going up. I've had some students write the word up on their paper because if you know it's going up, that tells us we know the slope is going to be positive. Our job is just to figure out what number it is. And the way we figure out the number, it's the same way we've been doing it this entire time. I'm going to use rise over run. So for this graph, it's really nice because there's 2 points already marked for me that I can use. But some of these later graphs are going to be more like our savings accounts from above where there are no points marked and you have to find some. But here, since I have these 2 points marked, I'm going to start on the left side. So that's this point right here at the origin. And I'm going to count my rise and I'm going to count my run. And it can help a lot of people to draw that triangle I just drew on the paper because it makes counting these correctly a lot easier. So I'm seeing from my picture that I went up 1 box, and since I'm going up, it's positive, and over 2 boxes. And so just like that, I've got my answer. It says that the slope is 1/2. I'm just going to write that. Slope is 1/2. Sometimes you get fractions that you can divide. Sometimes you get fractions you can simplify. And sometimes you get fractions like 1/2 that are already simplified and there's nothing else I need to do. So we're going to do this for a couple more problems and then I'm going to have you pause the video and try some for the last part. On our second graph here, it might help you, just like it helps some students I've had in the past. When you look at this graph, what's the first thing you notice about the direction? This graph here from left to right is going down. That means our slope is negative. So you might write that on your paper just to make sure you've got that negative sign in your answer. Now, specifically, I need to find my rise over run. So I'm going to draw that triangle for myself. Rise, remember, is always up or down. So starting on the left side, we've already noticed we're going to have to go down, specifically down this many, and then over this many. So I'm making that triangle from the first point to the second point. So when I go to calculate my rise, I notice I went down 2 boxes. And I keep saying the word down, down, down means negative. Down 2 boxes and over. Notice I'm starting right here. I'm not starting at 0. I'm starting right here. And so I'm going over 2 boxes. So I've got -2 over 2. Now that's a little different than before because you can figure out what that equals. What is -2 divided by 2? Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so negative 2 divided by positive 2 is negative 1. For this graph here, our slope is negative 1. Go ahead and see if you can find 2 points on this next graph that we could use to help us find slope. Looking at this graph, there's 3 options of points we can use. Now again, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people immediately notice that point right there from all the work we've done so far in graphing. And the next point I see, and I can zoom in for us, on that line that would be a good point to use is this point here. All of these ones at like 1, 2, and 3 are in the middle of boxes, and I'm not going to be able to count rise and run if it's in the middle of a box. But this point right here is perfect. You could have also looked backwards and seen this point here is also good. Well, like I said, when I've taught this in class, most people use these 2 here. So our job then is to find slope and find my rise over run. In preparation, you might notice, what direction is this line going? Can you tell? From left to right, this line is going down, which again means my slope should be negative. For rise over run, I need to count from my first point, again, not from 0, from the first point, and see how many boxes I need to go down and over to get to the second point. So starting at this point, I need to go down 1 box and over 4 boxes. Again, making that triangle can make your life a lot easier. So my rise over run, I said I'm going down 1 box and over 4 boxes. So again, that is a fraction. I can't simplify, I can't divide. I'm just going to say the slope is negative 1/4. One final example we're going to look at, and then I'm going to have you try to. Looking at this line, you might start by saying, what direction is it going? This line here isn't going up, it's not going down, it is horizontal. Now I'm curious, do you remember from that summary, those 4 summary graphs we did, or maybe the bank account? We've already said all horizontal lines have the same slope. Do you remember what we said? If I scroll up, horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. So I don't actually need rise over run. We know what the answer is. It is going to be 0. But let's say you didn't realize that and you immediately jump into rise over run because it's just so much fun. You could do the same thing we've been doing. You can pick 2 points on your graph. So maybe I pick these 2 points. But when I go to count my rise over run, do I need to go up to get to that next point? No. Do I need to go down? No. Do I need to move at all? No. So my rise, if I don't need to move at all, my rise would be 0. I need to go up or down 0 boxes. Now to get to that second point, I do need to go over. I would need to go over 3 boxes, but we've already got the 0, right? 0 divided by 3 is still going to be 0. So I have figured out that the slope is 0. That would be your final answer. So we have done 1, 2, 3, 4 different examples of finding slope. Notice every single time it comes back to rise over run. I've got 2 below. Oh, look. Oh, you lucky dog. I've got 4 for you. 4 for you here to try. Again, I think it really helps to start by just practicing identifying, is the line going up, down, something different, and then also can help to draw that triangle as you're counting to make sure you've got the right numbers. Go ahead, pause this video now, try these 4 graphs, and then come back to get the answers and see how you did. Okay. I got it set up for us for these first three here. I went ahead and drew a triangle that I'm going to count out. Remember, you could have picked different points. Before we do the counting, though, I do want to practice going through these. If you were pausing and asking yourself the direction, what direction does this first line go? It goes up. My second line, it goes down. My third line goes up. And my fourth line is a vertical line. Pausing and asking yourself those questions could be really helpful. So for this first graph, I am looking to see from the left to the right, how many boxes do I need to go up and over? For this one here, I'm counting. I'm going up 4 boxes, so that's a positive 4, and over 1 box to get from my first point to my second point. 4 divided by 1 is 4. So that must mean the slope is 4. For my second one, I've marked those 2 points there. So starting on the left side, that's at the point at the 5, and moving to the right from that first point at 5, I need to go down 5 boxes. Down 5 means -5, and I'm going over 4 boxes. There's nothing else I can do with that fraction, so that just means the slope is -5/4. For our third one, we already said it's going up. Now this one didn't have points marked, so there's a lot of different points you could have chosen on this. I chose the point at -3 and then this point right here at +3. So starting on the left side, we're always going left to right, the same direction you read. So from left to right, starting at the -3, I am going up 3 boxes, so that is a +3, and going over 3 boxes. And 3 divided by 3, we can do something with that. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So the slope is 1. For this final one, a good clue to what our answer is going to be is this word here, vertical. But let's say you did not notice this is a vertical line, and you did not look up at those notes we had taken earlier, and you tried doing rise over run. Rise over run here is different than what we saw with the horizontal line. If I pick 2 points on this line, so maybe I choose this point and this point. The rise, I would have to rise. I would have to rise 3 boxes. So I would have a number for the rise, but the run, to get from the first point to the second point, I don't need to move sideways. Remember, you're not counting back to 0. You're just counting from the first point to the second point. So here, I wouldn't need to move at all, left or right. So that would be a 0 here. Now, 3 divided by 0, I've gotten a lot of different answers in class. I've gotten 3 divided by 0 is 3. That's not true, though. 3 divided by 1 is 3. I've gotten 3 divided by 0 is 0, but that's not right. That's the other way around. 0 divided by 3 is 0. 3 divided by 0, if you type it into your calculator, it's going to say error because you cannot divide by 0. And so you might be asking the question, well, then what's the answer? Let's go back to that summary table we made. We said vertical lines have an undefined slope. And that is why your calculator is giving you an error, is because there is no number you can use to describe the slope of this line. And so we will finish this one by saying the slope is undefined. That right there would be your answer, is the word undefined. Hopefully, all 8 of those graphs were enough examples for you to start feeling confident about finding slope. Again, we're going to use some of this in tomorrow's lesson where we actually are writing equations and not just finding slope. So we'll get to practice the skill a little more. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found it helpful. Have a great rest of your day.